Welcome. Tonight is our Let's Talk ELP session. My name is Natalie, and I am the Recruitment Coordinator for International Students Studying in Canada. Feel free to use the Q&A features to ask questions. There will be some time as well at the end to discuss some of these questions, as long as they're not super duper specific and personal. But I also want to highlight that today's presentation mostly has a high school international student focus, especially if you're an international student studying in Canada. So if you are a graduate student, obviously my best advice would be to use the links pertaining to your graduate studies. So if you go through, and you'll see a hyperlink that's uab.ca/languagerecs repeatedly in today's session. If you just go through that link, there should be if you're a graduate student, please select here button, and you are more than welcome to select that to find out the ELP requirements for graduate studies. But today we're going to focus on undergraduate. We're going to focus on admissions from high school to university, and particularly how you can meet English language proficiency. What is it? There's many different types. So in the University of Alberta, we are actually looking at 3 types. So we're looking at English language proficiency, which is required of all of our students, regardless of if you're a Canadian citizen or from wherever else. So it's required of every single student for North Campus in Augustana and for our graduate studies, et cetera, et cetera. For spoken language proficiency, that's our kind of second type that we're looking at. If you're a student who's applying specifically to nursing or education, then spoken language proficiency will be required for you. So this one's kind of as an as-needed level of English language proficiency, just to make sure that you can speak it. And then finally, we do have our French language proficiency for our campus Saint Jean applicants. I won't be touching at all on French language proficiency today, just because it is mostly tailored to campus Saint Jean. But if that is something that you are interested in learning about, again, I encourage you all to go to this website, uab.ca/languagerecs. All of this information that we're going to be going through today, you will be able to find on that website, including things on spoken and French language proficiency. But for today, we're going to be talking about ELP specifically, with a little bit of input of spoken language on occasion. But one of the questions that I do get asked a lot typically is like, okay, how do I know I have to meet it? Like, how do I know I have to meet it? The easiest way, check your checklist. So after you have applied to the University of Alberta, you'll get what is called a Launchpad portal. So in this portal, this is where we will tell you exactly if you need to meet it or not, or if you haven't met it automatically through some of the things you've already listed in your application. So if you see this, lovely little X that says awaiting English language proficiency, it means that you must fulfill it in some of the ways that we're going to be talking about today. The other thing that you will see if you applied to nursing or education, is that spoken English language proficiency piece. So you'll see those X's and the spoken English language only if you're applying to any of those 2 programs, and then you know that you have to meet it as well. For spoken language, there might also be a form that you get to fill out in your Launchpad to self-declare your education. That being said, if you don't see it at all, then you've probably met it. So if you haven't seen any of these things in your Launchpad, it means you've probably met the conditions through your application itself. But if you do see these, just know you will have to provide proof of your English language proficiency requirement. As I mentioned before the session started, we do have a lovely little handbook that I made that has kind of the most common ways of meeting ELP on the back cover. So I always tell students this is a really nice kind of like launching pad to look through this little list, see if you have any of those, and if you don't, write a language test, essentially. So it's a nice little easy cheat for particularly for students, international students who are studying in Canada. So if you have any questions on that, again, that website's right there. And the deadline for all of these is typically August 1st, but we're going to talk a little bit more about deadlines in a second. And again, similarly, we do have that spoken language requirement piece for nursing and education on there as well. Okay, so ELP. Some common ways to meet it. So it could be through years of study, for example. It could be through specific coursework, which we're going to talk about some of the courses that you can take to meet it. Or it can be done by a language test. So I usually kind of tell students to think big picture and look to see if oh, maybe I have X years of study, or maybe I've taken X course. And if you don't have any of those ways, then we're going to do a language test. So I will kind of do the most general ones first, and then transition to the more specific nitty-gritty ways to meet ELP. I will like to preface as well that the document deadline is different for different folks. So, if you're a high school student coming to university for the first time, your deadline to submit your documentation is August 1st, or as stated. And then for transfer students, June 15th. So, you do have a little bit more of a quicker deadline coming up. And then for graduate professional programs or other students, as dependent on program type or other things, it is as stated in either the conditions of your offer letter or in the application of, for example, graduate studies, et cetera, et cetera. So I do encourage you to make sure that you're reading as to when your specific deadline might be if you are in any of those pockets of students. But if you're high school, August 1st is what we're looking at for all of our students. We're going to go with the most kind of general ones first. So we're going to start with years of study. Years of study is a little bit complex in that we're looking at 3 or more years. So 3 or more years of full-time study in English. Now the conditions to these is that you must have completed at least 5 4-credit courses per year in those 3 years. That calculation excludes any ESL or ELL courses. So that being said, if you are taking, let's say, for example, if you're taking 5 courses in grade 10 and 5 courses grade 11, 5 courses in grade 12, if you have taken 5 full credit courses, amazing. We will evaluate all 3 years using your final official transcript at the end of the year. But if, for example, you started in grade 10 and you did 5 courses and 3 of those courses are ESL or ELL courses, which English for second language and English language learning courses, then you would be deficient in that calculation. So I always tell students, go look at your transcript because it'll tell you exactly, first and foremost, the number of credits per courses you're taking, and secondly, if it was a regular program or if it was an ESL or ELL course. Again, most students tend to take more than 5 courses per year, so a lot of students, again, have that flexibility, but I do encourage you that if you're planning to meet ELP 3 years of study, to go look at your transcript to make sure that you have at least 5 full credit courses per year in those 3 years. Secondly, I do want to kind of specify what I mean by full credit courses. In some provinces, there's a lot of courses that maybe are modular courses that are partial credit courses. So those do not count towards the calculation. They must be like the core full credit value course in order to qualify for ELP. So as long as you have at least 5, none of those being ESL, ELL, no failed courses, then you would meet it 3 years of study. Spoken language proficiency, though, years of study is actually 6 years. So again, for that nursing and education programs, you're looking for 6 years of study versus 3. Another way to meet through years of study is actually through your previous education. So for example, again, we were talking about 3 years of full-time study in English. What if you did some of those 3 years outside of Canada? What if you did, what if you studied in the US or if you studied in, Tanzania or the UK? Like any of these kind of countries that are listed here are exempt from ELP. So that just means that you've checked it off. You've studied in English in any of these countries that are recognized as being the official primary language of instruction. You'll notice here there are some examples that have kind of a little asterisk associated with them. So you can see, for example, Cameroon, India, South Africa. That just means that they require some additional things, which I'll share about in a second. But one thing I do want to highlight here is that if your desired country is not on this list, you do have to meet your English language proficiency through maybe another method or through, another one of the methods that we're going to be talking about today. But that being said, you can see those 3 countries that have those little asterisks, and those little asterisks just essentially mean that there's something else you need to submit alongside just the declaration of the country of study. So right here you can see, for example, Cameroon and India and South Africa all need a certificate of some kind or a minimum grade of some kind. So just be aware that if you are coming from these 3 countries that you do need to provide additional proof through these methods. In summary, for years of study, we're looking at 5 for credit courses per year for 3 years for ELP, 6 years for spoken language proficiency. We're looking to make sure that calculation excludes any failed courses or any English for second language courses or English language learning courses. And then finally, we're looking to see if you have any exemptions or anything like that, whether it be through your school or the years of study that you have. Evaluating years of study is actually done through your final official transcripts. So that checklist, as I mentioned earlier, will be available in your Launchpad, and we'll be doing all of that evaluation through your transcripts at the end of your study. So I do want to highlight that that checklist is going to stay on your Launchpad until the end of your schooling. And it will remain that way until we receive your final official transcripts once you've graduated. So once you've graduated high school, typically if you're in Canada, your provincial governments will need to send us your transcripts, and then we will evaluate them. And then after we've evaluated them, that's when that item will be checked off. There's no need to send any interim transcripts as they will not be evaluated for ELP. We typically just receive the transcripts at the end of your schooling around August, to be honest. It usually happens about first week of August that we start getting them from BC, Ontario. We do receive all of the Alberta students' ones automatically. So just FYI that if you are an Alberta student, we will receive your transcript automatically. You don't need to send us anything. We'll just ensure that you have years of study based on that transcript that we receive. For other provinces or outside Canada, it is your responsibility to make sure that your school or ministry does send us your transcripts before that deadline, the August 1st deadline for high school or June 15th for transfer. You can also submit unofficial copies of your transcripts, but just know that that won't fulfill the requirement. We can evaluate it in the meantime and give you kind of a little bit of guidance as to whether or not that will. But that being said, it has to be a final official document from your school or ministry in order for it to qualify and fulfill the ELP requirement. Additionally, if you want some more information on, like, for example, translations or how to submit international transcripts, there's a beautiful little link right here, uab.ca/documents, that will give you some information in terms of like translation information or international documentation submissions, and so on and so forth. Also, if, again, as mentioned earlier, if that checklist item's not there, then you have met ELP through something that you've mentioned in your application. For our second type of meeting ELP, coursework. This one's actually really cool too, because let's say you're taking a specific coursework in high school, you might already be doing what you need to do to fulfill the requirement. For example, AP or IB students, if you're taking any of the courses that are listed here, so for example, English AP or English IB or English A language literature, English B, etc., if you're taking any of these courses and score these final marks at the end, boom, your ELP has been completed. For transcripts, we're going to be asking you to submit these after you have completed your programming. So it is your responsibility, again, to make sure that your IB transcript is requested and sent to us, that your AP transcript is requested and sent to us. And if you did take AP or IB outside of Canada, it is also your responsibility to do so as well. The next coursework method is probably one of my favorites. So this one I like to call kind of our Alberta advantage. So if you're a student studying in the Alberta curriculum, or if you're, Northwest Territory studying Alberta curriculum, amazing. You might be able to fulfill ELP through English Language Arts 30-1. So this is your main English course, your main grade 12 level English course here in Alberta. And if you score a minimum blended grade of 75% or higher, you're finished your ELP requirement. Amazing. So again, this is a really great method that we offer Alberta students. Essentially, the condition to this is that it has to be the blended coursework and diploma grade. So that diploma exam is a mandatory component. So if you're one of those students who has completed ELA 30-1 this year and didn't write the diploma, if you want to meet ELP using this, you will have to do the diploma in a separate sitting later this year. I believe there's one in April and one in June. So if you are wanting to do ELP through ELA 30-1, be sure to register for those. But if you are, kind of worried about it, there's, again, many different other ways that you can meet ELP that we're going to talk about. But this is one of the bonus ways that you can meet ELP if you are only an Alberta student. So if you are in BC or Ontario or Saskatchewan, unfortunately, you are not eligible using your grade 12 English course. It has to be ELA 30-1. And the reason for that is for that standardized test that we offer through the diploma exam. Coursework evaluation, very similar to our years of study. We're going to be using your final official transcripts at the end of the year. Similar to years of study, that will remain until you have graduated and we receive your final official transcripts at the end of your schooling. We do ask you and your IB coordinators, your AP coordinators to send these results directly to us so that we can evaluate based on your coursework. If you, again, are using ELA 30-1 or international coursework, we need your final official transcript from your school or ministry directly by that August 1st or June 15th deadline, depending on what type of student you are. Also, a quick note that if you are planning to retake coursework, like let's say you did ELA 30-1 and you're retaking it this year, you can let our admissions team know, but we won't be evaluating it for ELP until that final official transcript after all of your schooling is completed to verify it nonetheless. So you don't have to worry about that for about like upgrading the mark with us for ELP. We'll evaluate it at the end regardless, but it might be beneficial to let us know if you are retaking the course for maybe your program admission average or something like that. And finally, the last but most awesome way to meet our English language proficiency requirement is through a language test. So if at this point in time you've been listening and you're like, I don't have any of these things that Natalie is talking about, don't worry. You can always write a language test. This is probably the fastest and easiest way to fulfill the requirement. So language tests, we do accept a ton of different language tests, such as IELTS, Duolingo, TOEFL, KL, PTE, CAE, many different types of language tests that we accept. And in your original application, we do ask you kind of to let us know which one you're planning to, but if you do change your mind, that's okay too. You don't really need to let us know, but you could definitely send us your results of whatever test you have taken afterwards. And just a quick note that the test results must be less than 2 years old in order to qualify for that evaluation. Now, this is taken exactly from our website. So again, if you're looking at this and trying to write frantically, don't need to. You can just go to uab.ca/languagerecs to see all of the bands that are required for fulfillment of ELP. So if you look closely, there's also some conditions too. So for example, IELTS has to be the academic version. It can be online or in person. It has to be one sitting. Like those kind of conditions and things to look at in each section are going to be very important to make sure that you're going to be successful in fulfilling that requirement through that language test. I also want to highlight that this year, TOEFL has now gotten a new scoring system as of January. So just note that if you took the test before January 21, we will still acknowledge the former scores. But if you took it anytime after January 21st, we're going to be looking for that 1 to 6 scale versus the banded scores. We also do accept Duolingo. I know this is a question I get asked all the time, and yes, we do accept it. It is currently valid until 2028, 2029, and we do accept Duolingo English test scores for admission to the University of Alberta. It's very exciting. Some other kind of language tests that we do also have are obviously KL, K, CPE, PTE, many different types. So if you are curious to know about the lesser known versions of language tests, again, they're all on our website and you can see all of the conditions listed. And just a reminder once again to our nursing and education students, we are looking at your spoken English language proficiency requirements as well, separate to your ELP requirement. So we will be looking to see if you have the higher bands for that spoken section in your IELTS, Duolingo, or TOEFL exam. So just keep note and make sure to reach these band scores to be able to fulfill those requirements. Submitting test results. Kind of many different ways that you could do this. You could do this directly through the testing center, which is the kind of most direct option. So while you're taking the test, there's a little section that you could be like, yes, send these to the universities, and you can select all the ones that you want them to send it to. And we are one of those that does receive them directly through IELTS and the testing centers directly. It does take about 10 to 14 days to process it. So just know that once you've completed the test, it might take 2 weeks for it to reflect in your Launchpad account. That's okay. If you want to follow up with us, you're more than welcome to send me an email to just make sure that we get it after those 14 days. Another way that is really direct to submit your test results is to just upload it in a Launchpad if that feature is available. So in some cases, if your upload feature is an option, just go and put a PDF in there. Make sure that it contains your test report form number and it's legible, and we'll evaluate it that way. Or you can always submit a ticket to our student service portal, and you can just submit a general inquiry and be like, here are my test results. Include that PDF, include your CCID, and just your birthday and anything like that, some identifying information to be able to link it to your account. So if you do choose to complete a language test, here's some scenarios you might see. In this one that you see here, you can see that all three are awaiting. So in this situation, we haven't gotten a Duolingo English test score, we haven't gotten your English language proficiency, and we haven't gotten your spoken language proficiency. Again, as I mentioned, the test type that you're going to see there is based on what you put in your application. If you change your mind, that's okay. Like, you can still submit whatever test result, and we'll evaluate it and see if it meets the conditions. In this situation, you've submitted or we've received your Duolingo test results and they're amazing and you scored above a 120 and everything. Fantastic. Hurrah. You get 2 little check marks saying that we've received it and yes, you've completed it. So that is like obviously the scenario that you want before August 1st, where you have completed the requirement and fulfilled it to the best of your ability. As I mentioned, it does take about 10 to 14 days to receive any test results. And then once we have verified them, you will see that reflected in your Launchpad if you've met the conditions. Now, let's say we've received your test results, but they don't meet the conditions. So that is what you are seeing here right now. You're seeing that we received an English test score from Duolingo, IELTS, whoever, but we are still awaiting your English language proficiency. You will get some communication letting you know that, hey, we got your results, not quite what we need yet. Please try again. You can definitely write as many language tests as required before that August 1st deadline in order to meet that requirement. So again, you can see here, you can take it as many times as you need in order to fulfill it. And that kind of segues me to this other way that you can meet ELP, and that is through our bridging program. So let's say, for example, that you're absolutely amazing academically, you wrote an IELTS test and you just came short, you were just shy of the requirements. Well, you might still get an offer with a condition of doing an English course for a year. So that's what our bridging program is. Essentially, you get admitted on the condition of doing an English course for a year and then transition into your program. This is a great way to meet ELP, but it's also a great boost and support in English language learning at the university before beginning your studies. So if you want to know more about bridging, you can bookmark uab.ca/bridging. I will talk a little bit about it here. There are only 5 faculties that offer bridging. So let's say you applied to AILS, Arts, Augustana, KSR, or Native Studies, then you would have seen a question somewhere in that application that asked, would you like to be considered for bridging? And if you selected yes, we would consider you for bridging. There are 2 stages for bridging. So essentially this just is dependent on what your IELTS scores that we receive are. So let's say you did a language test, you just scored just shy. Let's say if you scored a 5.5, we might put you into level 2. If you scored something like a 5.0, we might put you into level 1. So it will depend which stage of bridging you get put into based on your scores that you have submitted for your language test. But that being said, it's open to all undergraduate applicants who have met that academic criteria but maybe don't meet that English language proficiency requirement. So just letting you know. The other thing I want to say too is that, like, let's say you get an offer to a bridging program. Fantastic, congratulations. You're more than welcome to accept that offer and then simultaneously keep trying to rewrite a language test to see if you can meet the requirement, or you can just leave it and take the bridging option and do that EAP 136, 137 to fulfill the ELP requirement at university. Finally, we are at the end here. This is the last method in which you can meet ELP, and this is specific to our transfer students. So what we're looking for here is a grade of B+ or better in 6 units of course weight of university level English studies completed at a recognized English language institution, which must be transferable as 6 units of course weight of English at the University of Alberta. So of course, we will use your official transcripts to evaluate to see if you meet ELP, having done some English coursework. And as I mentioned before, we are looking for 6 credits of transferable English non-ESL coursework. So those are kind of like all of the ways that that we can meet English language proficiency. But one of the things I want to highlight for all of our students is please, 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 please check your Launchpad. This is going to be the place where we communicate whatever we need to communicate with you on. It also I also want to highlight that again, please read your offer letters. So if you have an offer letter, read it to make sure that there are any conditions that you need to meet. English language proficiency will probably be one of those conditions that you do need to meet. So I encourage you, again, to plan ahead, to see how you will meet it. Ask us questions, submit any necessary documentation before that August 1st or June 15th deadline, and just make sure that you're successful. And again, don't be afraid to ask any questions if you have them. And finally, here's the link again for how to submit documents, including our mailing address, our email address. And don't forget that if you're choosing to meet ELP using your final official transcripts, it is your responsibility to ensure that your province or school knows to send that to us after you've graduated. For Apply Alberta students, don't worry, we'll get yours automatically. But for all other students outside of Alberta, again, that is your responsibility to make sure that we will receive that documentation. And again, if you are coming from out of country or have other transcripts that you need to submit, this is a really good spot to be able to see any translation information or anything like that. So other than that, I do want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I hope that you learned a little bit about ELP, and I hope you found a way that you're like, oh yes, absolutely, I've got that, no worries, and feeling a little bit more confident in how to submit and what kinds of things you'll need to do in order to fulfill that English language proficiency requirement. I will open it up to questions right now, but if you do not want to stick around, you're more than welcome to email me. This is my email right here, mapleleaf@ualberta.ca. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And I also just want to highlight too that we've got a couple of upcoming sessions for international students, particularly the study permit webinar coming on March 19th. That's also going to be with me. And then we also have our Talk to Teo series for post-secondary international transfer students. So I do invite you to go check these events out next. And don't forget to win some fun prizes as well. So feel free to register for those prizes. Again, sign up for our newsletter and stay in contact with us. We would